More 001 proposals. There are a lot of SCPs in the SCP universe. More than 100, in fact. But generally the most impactful or important to SCPs are reserved for the coveted 001 slot. Unlike every other SCP slot, there isn't one single article that receives the 001 designation, but rather numerous articles exist as potential proposals for the slot. I've looked at quite a few 001 proposals over the years, but this video will take a look at a number of the more concise ones. Let's take a look. Let's start with SCP-001. I guess we need a little bit more than that. Let's start with SCP-001, the sky above the port. We're told at the beginning that this document exists as technical containment for an anomaly, and thus does not adhere to standard SCPnet formatting. Once we access the document, we see that SCP-001 is an ongoing ZK-class reality failure scenario, which is prevented from happening through several procedures manipulating its sub-anomalies. The only known observable symptom of 001 is the sky becoming a different color, and it's believed that if it were to progress to the point where other symptoms began to occur, it would become irreversible. 001-1 is a levitating object contained within Point Alpha, a cave chamber 5 kilometers south of the ruins of Babylon. It visually resembles a perfectly smooth sphere with a texture similar to blurred television static. Measurements indicate that it is currently a number of meters in diameter, although this number in the article constantly changes every few seconds. Solids and liquids that pass within the bounds of it are replaced entirely with argon gas, giving the illusion of disappearing. 001-2 is an entity that is capable of being seen within Point Alpha, although its manifestations are random. Witnesses report seeing it past the walls of the cave, and from descriptions, it is humanoid in shape and large in stature, only visible when looking through the levitating sphere. Descriptions of it vary from person to person, with common features including it being emaciated, with long limbs and prominent facial features. It takes the position of lying against the wall, most often seen with a neutral expression. However, the expression occasionally changes to discomfort or bliss. It has been determined from historical precedent that entertaining this entity through the sphere will prevent SCP-001. Point Alpha and its contents are believed to date back to prehistory, with Babylonian scripts indicating that the sphere was routinely patrolled by a group of sages, known as the Order of White and Black. These sages refused passage to anyone who could demonstrate the ability to read or write. They were made defunct by the rise of Achaemenid Persia, which contained the sphere with a group of Zoroastrian monks. Very few accounts of the sphere are present, with recovered accounts asserting that all information about it and its significance was passed orally. The most substantial account of the sphere and the entity at this time dates back to the Greek philosopher Zara, who made an expedition into the Achaemenid Empire and found Point Alpha. During Alexander of Macedon's conquest of the Achaemenid Empire, he took interest in Zara's texts and continued containment of the sphere. However, this new institution, known as the Cronus Guard, was given Greek epics to read in order to punish Cronus for his actions. This institution lasted through the partition of Macedon into the Seleucid Empire, the rise of the Sassanid Empire, and even the formation of the Rashidun Caliphate. The Cronus Guard were eventually replaced with an Islamic equivalent, the Society for the Containment of the Babel Demon. This group was the first to perform substantial research on the sphere, and the first to accurately link it to the reality failure scenario. We're given some notes from the Society and the various bits of literature that they read to the entity through the sphere. They read the first quatrain of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, which resulted in the entity squirming but otherwise not reacting. After reading the rest of it, there were no changes. They read a poem written by one of their own, meant explicitly for the entity, which caused it to thrash more than usual until the reading stopped. The sphere began to expand until the Genealogies of the Nobles is read to it. They then decided to not read anything to it for 10 days, causing the sphere to expand and the entity to thrash. Externally, the sky above the camp turned a darker red color, until the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam is red again. The entity thrashed more than during previous readings, though, and it's believed that the Quran may no longer have any effect on it. They then read 1001 Nights to it, causing it to cease thrashing. New literature may be necessary to prevent further phenomena from occurring. The society was eventually absorbed into the Office for the Reclamation of Islamic Artifacts, who assumed containment of the sphere. After an incident, however, the Foundation purchased Point Alpha from Oriya for a large sum of currency and several safe-class anomalies. The incident occurred when personnel with Oriya read the book Great Book of Interpretation of Dreams, as per normal containment. However, the entity was observed to rapidly thrash while screaming, and the sphere swelled from 50 centimeters to 3.2 meters in diameter. Shortly following this event, the reality failure scenario began to worsen. The sky across the world turned a black and white color similar to the texture of the sphere. In addition, reality-bending phenomena began worldwide, causing deformed geography, the manifestation of dangerous anomalous objects, and several natural disasters. The event concluded after personnel read the entity an undisclosed number of as-of-yet unread books, causing it to cease thrashing. The damage caused by the incident was deemed enough to require an activation of SCP-2000, and prompted the Foundation to take control of containment. During the incident, vocalizations in Davish were recorded, with the source being presently unknown. They don't have full translations, but the vocalizations include, "It has passed some space or time. The Geira has passed. It used to be fun. It is time to leave. You cannot root yourself forever. The Geira has passed. You must awaken. No, you have entered slumber for too long. Wake up, King. It is time for you to wake up. It is fun to be in the Geira, but you cannot be rooted there forever. It is entertaining, but you must wake up. Wake up, King. We miss you." We're next given a discussion thread for various proposals of continuing containment of SCP-001. In the past year that the Foundation has spent containing it, its literature needs have become increasingly draconic. They can very rarely reread books without it beginning to thrash, and even then they're running out of high-quality literature to give it. One proposal was to use artificial intelligence constructs to automatically generate new stories for it, which was approved. An AIC was able to generate 10,000 volumes of stories imitating Greek literature. However, when the first was read to the entity, it began thrashing beyond acceptable measures until it was read approved reading. Color me shocked. Another proposal was to hire a full team of authors to write literature for it, but this was denied, as in the past, literature written specifically for it has failed to contain it. Another proposal was to read main list documentation for an SCP to it, which was denied due to representing a possible information leak. After a containment breach of the entity, however, they decided to approve it. It was observed to stop thrashing and stay completely still, seemingly smiling. In addition, the SCP article was able to be read for 14 consecutive readings before it resumed normal activity. It was then approved to read main list documentation of other SCPs regularly, as well as the replacement of the 001 file with several 001 proposals, with much more grand implications than normal SCP files. It's noted that by only occasionally reading 001 files, the entity is observed to be more calm on average. The previously observed actions of retaliation in response to specially crafted literature do not apply here. It was also approved for the SCP series to be expanded beyond SCP-999, and the declassification of several unnumbered SCP objects into those slots. At one point, Given the variation of the current 2,957 SCP main list files, the entity is to be read a random arrangement of those files on repeat. That strategy ended up succeeding for approximately 3 years, until it began thrashing rapidly, requiring newer documentation to sedate. It was proposed that the SCP series be expanded beyond SCP-4999, but this was denied, as the entity has required progressively more SCP main list articles for containment, even to the point of fabrication of some anomalous entities. It was also proposed that they rewrite several old SCP main list files to be more exaggerated and narrative-like. This is tentatively approved, with it noted that deliberately exaggerating their files for the purpose of this entity is crossing some lines, but for now it will have to do. They need a better way. The last proposal is the creation of a file describing SCP-001 that uses recursion to effectively be never-ending. Psychoanalysis related to the entity's apparent enjoyment of works implies a slight ego and bias towards works about itself, and past strategies with this idea have worked for long periods of time. The file is to be archived as a technical file. This proposal was approved and implemented. When we advance to the next section of the article, then, we're given the start of the article once again, and the article endlessly repeats. I'd rather not admit how many times I clicked ahead. Alright, so it's an entity that is sleeping in a cave somewhere, and if it wakes up, the Foundation's reality begins to literally fall apart at the seams. In order to prevent it from waking up, they have to read it stories to entertain it. They go through all of the good literature they can, try and fail to use an AI to make up stories, and then decide to start reading it SCP bedtime stories, which works quite well. Eventually, though, they run out of SCPs, even when they start making some up, so they decide to just give it the article about itself, endlessly repeating. The idea, of course, is that we are this entity, endlessly voracious for more and more stories, featuring a constant stream of new ideas. If we get too displeased with what the SCP universe has to offer us, it could just unravel and die off. I know I, for one, certainly thrashed quite a bit when I realized the article just endlessly looped. Let's move on to SCP-001, The Foundation, which appears to be a file belonging to the FBI's Unusual Incidents Unit. It's an altered high school building that they have labeled as Confirmed Anomaly 3. So this must have been fairly early days for them. They were alerted to its existence on September 7th, 1954, when students attending the school reported that the interior of the building was vastly different than it had been at any point in the past. Upon discovery, it exhibited several unusual traits. Nearly all walls in the facility had been replaced with steel-reinforced concrete, although several rooms were constructed of other materials for no readily apparent reason. All exterior windows had been covered from the inside. All student desks, personal effects, textbooks, and other materials expected of a high school were completely absent. Lockers were still present, but significantly smaller and constructed of stainless steel. The arrangement, location, and size of rooms and facilities did not match blueprints for the school. Often, rooms would exhibit seemingly random modifications, although the number of changed rooms is currently unknown. No fewer than 17 electronic computers were found, each of which made use of state-of-the-art magnetic core RAM. Prior to its classification as a confirmed anomaly, the high school had no computers. All files were inaccessible, and the computers themselves were firmly bolted down. The auditorium is inaccessible due to a large steel wall completely blocking the doorways. Attempts to move or damage the barrier have been ineffective, and the extent and purpose of the barrier are unknown, as are the contents of the auditorium. A team sent into the interior of the building to do a complete survey did not return, nor did a second team tasked with locating the first team. 23 days after initial recovery, guards reported white noise emanating from the facility, the volume of which increased near its auditorium. 5 hours later, the white noise stopped, although the sound of voices was audible from the interior of the facility. Upon further investigation, it was found that the building now contained a large number of persons, all of whom appeared to be wandering aimlessly. Notably, each individual was physically identical to a member of the second team sent in, despite the inhabitants of the facility vastly outnumbering the members of the team. Attempts to interview or detain them were thwarted by something classified. The 12 members of the survey team were not found, and the interior layout of the facility had changed significantly again. 3 months later, white noise was heard again, and this time they decided to investigate immediately. It was found that most of the inhabitants had gathered near the doors of the auditorium. A circular hole roughly 6 feet in diameter had formed in the steel barrier, although the interior was not visible. At 3:10 a.m., an item resembling something classified emerged from the hole and was carried away by an inhabitant. The item was placed in one of the classrooms, and this process continued for upwards of 8 hours, with a new item being produced once every 3 minutes. Most were seen entering a different room or locker, although insufficient personnel were available to track all items. Further investigation revealed that most, if not all of the items produced, exhibited anomalous properties themselves. A significant portion of the inhabitants are involved in either guarding the items produced or performing various tests on them. 2 days later, 3 identical armed guards appeared near each entrance to the facility. Further attempts to enter the building were futile, as these guards have consistently overpowered all teams sent to enter, regardless of injury or relative level of armament. Reports gathered during the 2 days prior to the guards manifesting appear to confirm that the inhabitants are following standard UIU protocol regarding the items. Their knowledge of UIU standard procedure is consistent with that of the survey team. On May 15, 1965, a message was transmitted in Morse code from the facility on standard UIU communication frequencies. The message read, "Hello. We are the O5 Council, and we, Secure, Contain, Protect, we have been shown to do, and it would be nice to be friends. It is nice to have been a part of your excellent, but it is best that with superior resources given the greatness, we will control containment. Our sincerest apologies regarding guards and detainment, workers and secrets kept needed, the time and waits we apologize, the radio blocked by 1 SCP or 2. Expect an expansion soon, for we spaces, for although away from auditorium, okay, but unwant." 8 hours later, another transmission was received, which read, "Expanded now. See the federal building, it is now a functional. Need doctors, guards, D-men, recruiting. Anomalies found and further possibly international. Researching, of course, possible. International may be days, weeks to do. Further, we O5 are aware, sorry to O6 missed, that legible barely, but go between auditorium not something redacted. Goodbye, and luck with your troubles." The end of the document says that for further information, see the UIU file on an altered federal building, confirmed anomaly 10. It seems then that the UIU helped inadvertently create the Foundation, which just popped up in a random high school as an anomaly. It just started changing things, but then learned about containing and studying anomalies from the UIU team it captured. It's an interesting potential explanation for the Foundation's origins, though I can't imagine any other anomalous organization ever trusting them in this timeline, which I guess is pretty much the case most of the time anyways. Next, we have SCP-001 Normalcy, which opens with a note from the O5 Council. It states that, if we're wondering why this object is here where it doesn't belong, it's important to remember 2 things. First, the 001 slot is specifically reserved for use by the O5 Council as they deem necessary. Second, Consensus reality is simply consensus of the Council. SCP-001 has the object class of non-anomalous, and the description states that it is the document describing consensus reality. Anomalous activity is therefore defined as any activity that occurs outside the parameters of the document. The document may describe certain characteristics of reality as inherently anomalous, as decided upon by the O5 Council. General practices have included universal laws of gravitation, physical forces, and basic chemistry, biology, sociology, and philosophy. Presently, discovered and technological development are not considered anomalous as long as they are built on a framework of knowledge previously designated consensus reality using the scientific method. All new claims of discovery are to be monitored for developments outside the parameters of SCP-001, which can be reproducible. Claims of discovery that cannot be reproduced and appear to affect the perception of only the individual reporting the claim are not considered anomalous and can be allowed into the general public. In most cases, these claims may result in the public calling them hallucinations, crackpot theories, or conspiracies, and discounted. This is to be encouraged because it allows for plausible deniability when an anomaly is more widely witnessed in public. All activities and objects outside the parameters of 001 are to be tracked, secured, contained, removed from public knowledge, and protected by the SCP Foundation. Studies from such objects can be used in proposals for further updates to 001. I suppose it makes sense that if the Foundation is going to maintain normalcy and contain anything abnormal, they sort of need some guidelines of what that would be. We're given some excerpts of conversations between O5 members discussing various updates to the 001 file. One was in 1932, discussing the declaration of modern witchcraft traditions arising in the UK as anomalous. One O5 member wonders why they're even covering this, as there are traditional beliefs in cultures throughout history that they don't consider anomalous. They can't use their position to threaten the right of humanity to believe. Someone else replies that this new witchcraft is a modern invention, developed through a scholarly reading of practices as an alternative to Christianity. It is not a continuation, and practitioners are attempting spell casting. Someone replies that the document is clear. Theurgy is anomalous. Religion and spirituality are not. If they can show proof that they are casting spells that cannot be explained through rigorous testing, he will personally see to containing those spells himself. Until then, it shall be allowed. Someone else agrees and says that they will need all the faith they can muster against the theurgic traditions. They never know when a new faith will assist in their cause. In 1945, the Council discussed the re-evaluation of physics on the subject of nuclear fission after the Trinity test as part of the Manhattan Project. One O5 member says that they can barely comprehend what they saw. It was like the sun rising from the desert sand, a dawn of destruction and fire that lasted for miles around. They cannot believe that such an explosion could ever be seen as possible. Tales and prior evidence of the summoning of gods have had less impact. They tremble with fear about the possibility of people wielding this kind of power, the ability to level a city with the flick of a switch. The others discuss if this technology is anomalous, but they conclude that scientific testing was completed each and every step of the way. They do not believe this is anomalous, no matter how frightening the repercussions are. One asks if they're just going to let people hold on to the keys to their own destruction. Someone else replies that they do not prevent destruction, they sequester the anomalous. Someone else asks if they can imagine a future where any 2-bit dictator chooses to unleash the fire of 1,000 suns whenever he wishes. Maybe the problem isn't with the equations, maybe the whole of nuclear physics is anomalous itself. Another O5 says that they can't just secure nuclear physics from the world. Radioactivity is everywhere, and they end up causing more contradictions when they try to send themselves back to the Dark Ages. Nuclear physics is here to stay. and they had better get used to the consequences of this, no matter how terrifying this will be for the planet and for humanity. In 2014, the Council discussed the worm that walks phenomenon, a trope in which a character is actually a writhing hive mind of worms, generally held together as a single mass. There's a conspiracy that has arisen that certain individuals are actually worms that walk, and not humans. There's no merit to it, as conspiracy believers are divided themselves on who is a worm that walks and who isn't, and all evidence indicates that there aren't actual worms that walk in the general populace. It pretty clearly falls under irreproducible conspiracy theories. Another O5, however, replies that it might not be as irreproducible as they think. On December 11th, 2013, a believer in the conspiracy in Alabama killed his neighbor under the belief that the neighbor was a worm that walks. The killer then took a video of his deceased neighbor and uploaded it to YouTube, claiming it was proof of the conspiracy, and that the corpse was dissolving into individual worms before his very eyes. He said that he was going to take a sample. The video was very quickly blocked and removed, and everyone who has viewed the video agrees that the subject is unmoving and does not dissolve into worms. The killer turned himself into the police, and an autopsy of the victim confirmed that he was missing a thumb post-mortem and killed by gunshot to the chest, which wouldn't have killed him if he were a worm that walks. After the autopsy, though, the assistant coroner oversaw the return of the body to the next of kin. The assistant coroner was also a conspiracy believer, and despite not having had any prior contact to the parties involved, screamed in disgust upon entering the examination room, grabbing a mop and complaining about all the worms everywhere. No one else noticed any signs of worm infestation. To test this, they acquired the corpse and showed it to a number of D-Class, who all agreed that it was a human corpse. They then introduced them to the worm that walks conspiracy, and upon viewing the corpse again, 20% of them agreed that it was actually a mass of worms. The Cognitohazard Department scanned the conspiracy literature and found it negative for mimetic effects, but did find a chart in one pamphlet that would function like a nestic trigger, unlocking a memory. It would only work if the affected had had that memory. A memory of recently seeing a living worm that walks. The Council concluded by strengthening the language regarding nestic triggers to include recent perception. Although there remains no evidence that there is any truth to the worm that walks conspiracy, the repercussions of the existence of a nestic trigger that works is something to think about. The rest of the text then becomes garbled, and upon trying to access an addendum, there's some more garbled text, along with a mimetic kill agent. The kill agent is a heavily pixelated image, along with a quote from author Philip K. Dick, which reads, "Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away." After clicking a button to access SCP-001, we're prompted with a question of, does the black moon howl? It doesn't actually matter what you type in here, as it takes us to the same document, a note from 055, which reads, "Hello. I'm afraid you won't find SCP-001 here. It's stored in a far more unreachable location than this. I'm sure you were hoping you could get in, edit it in a couple of places here and there, and voila, you're no longer anomalous. You're free to go. The Foundation will harass you no longer. Of course, it can't be that easy. But I am going to help you. You deserve this much. I'm going to tell you why. Why the Foundation targets you. Why we deem you something to contain, to persecute. After all, there are far worse evils in the world. We kept our record of nuclear weapons above as an example. There are numerous genocides throughout history. The death toll from just the flu alone is far greater than the potential damage for thousands of the people and objects we contain, and yet we dedicate ourselves to branding you anomalous. Something not normal. Something inherently wrong. Something that cannot be allowed its peace. Why? I'm not going to patronize you and say there's nothing I can do. I'm only one voice on the council, and I can't change things on my own, that's true. But the decisions I make, and the way I let myself view your circumstance, are a direct cause of people seeing fit to throw you into a box. Even if I can't change the document, I could remain one more advocate for your normalcy. After all, humanity has believed in ghosts and spirits for thousands of years. We all believe in the monster under our beds when we're children. These phenomena are very real, and very much a part of the way the world works. Why can't we just declare them normal? Why won't I free you from your torment? It's because we aren't only here to secure, contain, and protect the world. We're here to secure, contain, and protect you. The defining feature of the anomalous is that it cannot be explained through simple scientific testing. This makes you and your nature different, unique even, and that scarcity makes it valuable. But that doesn't mean that your value is something everyone can appreciate. Sometimes it can only be appreciated by those who would use it against you. That scarcity is also the tool by which a monster can exploit you. Others aren't familiar with your anomaly and won't respond to descriptions of it as real. This gives opportunity to nefarious individuals to exploit that lack of knowledge and use you as an eldritch pawn to their pleasure. They can isolate you, consume you, make your anomaly their lever to destroy, slake a sadistic thirst with your existence. I'm sure you've seen it happen. Someone is different. Their desires, needs, their reality forces them to be ostracized by the world at large. They're left alone, probably not friendless, but sidelined, starved for connection. That's when someone swoops in, promising greatness, but only offering that connection you crave through consumption of you, destruction of your world, perversion of your reality. You fight back, try to tell someone of your plight, but others respond, "Oh, that can't be happening. That's not real. You must be mistaken." You are alone in your anomaly and left to suffer. We can't let that happen. Yes, go ahead. Point out that we're isolating you at least as well, slowly consuming you in your existence just as surely as some abuser might wish to burn you up. Call us monsters. It's okay. But keep in mind that even in our pursuit of you, our cover-up, our incarceration of you, we still want to make sure that you continue to exist, that you aren't removed entirely from this world. You have every right to exist. You have every right to be as different as you are. You, the monsters out there, the monsters in here, you are all just as real as we are. Just as real as the teeming, irrational, self-destructive humanity that remains ignorant to your plight. And the conclusion that we are all, in the end, the same stuff, I hope you can find comfort in it. Yes, you are a monster. But whether we are deemed anomalous or not, so is every last one of us. And that means you deserve your existence. We secure you. We contain you. We protect you. And even if you still don't get why I'm doing this, please understand that I still love you. Well, that's at least one O5's justification for why they do what they do. Perhaps it's gaslighting, perhaps it's delusional, or perhaps the Council really does love every anomaly, even down to the puppy-killing machine. I think this one is one of those articles that either works with a reader's headcanon, or really doesn't at all. Next, we have SCP-001, The Legacy, a set of 2 objects and 33 documents belonging to the Administrator. The 2 objects are completely expunged from the record, but the documents are a mixed set of handwritten and printed documents, normal in all respects, except that they do not show signs of aging or fading in any way. The contents of the documents consist of expunged data, some more expunged data, and even more expunged data. Don't worry, this is going somewhere. It's mentioned that these objects formed the impetus for the creation of the SCP Foundation and all of its constituent activities and processes. As such, this information is only to be disseminated by direct order of O5 Command. After going past the Level 5 classification, we're given an analysis of the two objects. The first is a small, smooth device composed of an unidentified gray metallic substance. It is unusually heavy, weighing approximately 18 pounds, and is equipped with a small digital display, with a single opening that appears to be a type of keyed activation switch. Attempts to disassemble the device or analyze its technology have been unsuccessful so far, as there appears to be no seams or fasteners visible on the device. Attempts to image its interior utilizing X-ray or magnetic resonance have resulted in inconsistent results, suggesting either that it's too dense to properly image or has inconsistent internal topography. It appears to only be capable of displaying two indicators, one being a status or progress bar with an accompanying number, currently at 23%. The other is a single-digit counter displaying a redacted 5-digit number. The second object is a small key composed of the same metallic substance. It is currently assumed that this is the activation key for the device. The rest of the article consists of excerpts from the documents, all of which were found within the administrator's personal diary. I'll be reading these verbatim. I always hated the idea of writing in a diary. Documentation is one thing, but I guess I never saw the point in putting down my personal thoughts. The scientist in me is telling me that someday, someone might want to know how this all started. They say that the first time is always the hardest. I have managed to secure funding and personnel from the federal government, and I have established an organization that will allow me to continue the research. The president insists that I turn the device over for safekeeping, but I have made it clear that I can't let it out of my possession. Progress, unfortunately, has been slow these past decades. I am adamant that we cannot reproduce the technology until we have found a solution, as I am sure that unless we kill both birds with one stone, we will simply hasten the process. I had to kill them. They had been reproducing the technology all along and hiding it from me. I will be moving on in the next 24 hours. This place is doomed at this point. Again, I will not make the same mistake again. The mere thought of lying to the very people I need to reach my goal is bitter, but I can no longer afford to let them know the truth. Memo from the Office of the Administrator. Humanity has existed in its current state for hundreds of millennia, yet only the last few have held any meaning for us. What did we do for the countless years before recorded history? We huddled in caves, warding off the night with small fires, fearful of the things that we could not understand. It was not just that we did not understand why the sun rose every morning. It was the mystery of enormous fish with the heads of men, and rocks that came to life, and monsters that drove those who saw them mad. So we called them angels and devils, begged them to spare us from their wrath, and prayed for salvation. As time passed, their numbers died out and mankind flourished. The world began to make more sense. Yet the unexplained can never truly go away, as if the universe requires for there to be things we can never truly understand. We will not go back into the dark, fearful night. We will not be ruled by the unknown. We will stand up for ourselves. Even as the rest of humanity remains uninformed, we will fight the darkness, containing it and shielding it from the eyes of the common man, so that they can continue to live in the blissful illusion of a normal world. Their faces haunt me in my dreams. Hundreds, thousands of them. Ones who blindly went to their deaths. For me. Made a mistake. Told someone the truth, the night before I left. Had to use the last of my original medical supplies. In a way, I wish he'd aimed for the head. This one solved an equation that could set a framework for the rest of the solution. I killed them by my own hand. Could they have ever imagined that it was an act of mercy? I suddenly remembered today what they told me before I left. They said that I probably wouldn't see anything, that I would probably simply fall asleep and wake up again. They lied. I can see them as they are consumed by madness, as the walls of reality crack and shatter, only to be replaced as if nothing happened. I can see everything. It is finally done. The equations are complete. The math is sound, but it comes too late once again. This team will not have the time to construct the solution, and I will have to abandon the Foundation again. But I do so with the knowledge that no more will have to suffer the same fate. To whom it may concern. First, I want to say that I am sorry for everything. I have most likely doomed you and everyone you have ever known to death and destruction by my mere presence in your world. If you are in possession of and reading this document, then I am probably dead. If that is the case, and I did not bother to destroy this evidence, then that means I have also probably failed in my mission. This means that my responsibilities have now passed on to you, and that your fate and the fate of your world are now in your hands. I was not born into your world. I am a traveler from a parallel plane of existence, an alternate reality separate from your universe. The year from which I originate is of little consequence. If I've learned anything from my travels, the passing of time from universe to universe is meaningless. What is important is that in my plane of origin, mankind was highly advanced. We harnessed the power of entire stars, molded planets and moons alike to suit our needs, and even learned to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. We had conquered death through advances in medicine and technology, and we thought ourselves masters of our own fates. We realized too late that all such things have a cost, and that our greed and hubris would not only result in the loss of everything we held dear, but doom countless others as well. Our meddling in the structure of existence had opened up cracks and twists in the fabric of reality, a corruption of the multiverse that we had failed to notice earlier because we could not see the pieces of our reality leaking into others. By the time feedback began to manifest, it was already too late to stop it. Before this corruption consumed us completely, we came up with one final failsafe. We would gather up what knowledge we could save and sacrifice our world to send a single individual through to the next. This could not repair the damage that had already been done, but could buy us the time to start over, to find a way to stop the corruption of reality. That individual was me. If you have not already found them, then the evidence to support my claims will begin to bleed into your world soon enough. Like a rain of glass, the shattered remains of other universes will begin to fall and slip into yours. Things that defy your understanding, fixed loops and structures without meaning or rhyme that cannot be destroyed by any means you possess. Things that drive men mad and challenge all the assumptions that you hold dear. That which I carry with me is the final legacy of countless worlds. The equations and technology described in its pages carry with them the hope of stopping the corruption, a hope that has come with a heavy price. They are the last will and testament of a bloody trail of universes that have sacrificed and been sacrificed that those who remain may avoid their fate. At the time of this writing, they are nearly complete, but time is ever against me. If I am no longer able to see this mission through to its bitter end, then it falls to you to finish what I began. Good luck. The Administrator. The last document is a single handwritten page found between the last page and back cover of the diary. The handwriting is inconsistent with that of the other handwritten documents. It reads, "This is it. the last evidence that our civilization will have ever existed. No one is entirely sure what will happen when you activate the failsafe. Some of them are saying that the backlash from using it will instantly shatter what remains of our existence. Others are saying that using something of this power will merely accelerate the corruption by 100-fold. Either way, it will be quick. By the time you wake up at your destination, there will be nothing left of our home. You already know that it will only carry a single passenger, and the second team should have your gear ready by the time you're ready to go. I can only hope that with the time we've bought you, you can find a way to stop this disaster. If not, the device will keep track of the relative corruption level of local reality, as well as how many times it's been activated. A bit sadistic of us, perhaps. By the time you read this, I will already be dead. I'm sorry, but you have always been the stronger one. I don't have the strength to face the end with my head held high. Not without you. I love you. It's noted that references found within the documents suggest the existence of an electronic device or large document containing comprehensive technological and mathematical data related to SCP-001. Its current whereabouts are unknown. So the Foundation's administrator is a guy from a parallel universe that's way more advanced, but died off due to some sort of reality corruption. This corruption manifested in the form of anomalous entities or objects, SCPs in other words. They managed to create a device that can send one person to another universe to try and find a way to stop this spreading corruption, and the administrator had been bouncing along, still unable to do so. The device shows that it has been activated thousands of times, if not tens of thousands of times, so he's been at this a while. Now it seems he's passed away, and the last document that explains everything he's learned about stopping the corruption appears to be missing. The corruption counter is currently at 23%, with plenty of bad stuff already in reality, so it's hard to imagine what the universe would look like at higher numbers. It's a relatively short and simple proposal in an older style, attempting to explain both why anomalies exist and why the Foundation exists to stop them. The long and the short of it, though, is that the universe is pretty screwed. Next, we have SCP-001, the Lock, a smooth, black, perfectly ellipsoidal onyx gemstone with a mottled white pattern. Wrapped around its exterior, encompassing its equator and both poles, is a complex and layered fractal filigree of gold metal. The gold is sculpted into broad strokes at what is now usually agreed to be the lower or south pole of the object, but with increasing latitude, the pattern becomes progressively more intricate. Near the north pole, also called the lock or singularity, the pattern complexity progresses beyond the capacity of optical or electron beam microscopes to resolve. Further investigation is pending advances in microscopy technology. The gemstone continuously emits a small quantity of thermal radiation in the microwave range, resulting in the gold filigree being warm to the touch. The white mottled areas emit fractionally more radiation than the black onyx areas. Other than this, the object is totally inert, opaque to all forms of electromagnetic and hard radiation, and so far indestructible. Its onyx/gold composition is guessed from visual inspection, since the taking of samples for chemical analysis has proven impossible. Under Project Pluto, quite a number of experiments to attempt to open the stone have failed. They tried conventional lockpicking, brute force assault with hammer and chisel, sledgehammer, bolt cutters, welding torch, bandsaw, etc. Sustained heating to 5,000 degrees centigrade in industrial furnaces, direct application of industrial cutting laser, compression in vise, car crusher, hydraulic diamond-faced press, application of corrosive acids and other highly oxidizing compounds, detonation of plastic and solid explosives, and detonation of a 15-kiloton TNT-equivalent atomic warhead at point-blank range. I'll note that they did not try asking nicely. A note from Dr. Hack states that Project Pluto is to be immediately terminated, but this is crossed out. A second note from Dr. Mirsky states that Project Pluto is ongoing with the full support of Foundation resources. The earliest record of the stone is in the handwritten journal of the minor Scottish aristocrat Sir Edwin Young. As was customary at the time, he kept a cabinet of curiosities, a small room of artifacts of undetermined provenance such as sculptures, preserved creatures, and trinkets. His journal includes references to his acquisition in 1654 of a bound jewel of onyx and gold filigree, of fineness beyond rational statement, while traveling across the Mesopotamian desert. The journal indicates that the stone was found buried in the ruin of a bitter, blasted place, older than days, or what he took to be a temple to a fearsome death god. It was found encased in stone at the center of 4 enormous runic stones. His journal includes a sketch of the most readable side of the most well-preserved stone, but he was unable to read the ruins or find a scholar who could translate them. His account of his journey to the location of the ruin is incomplete, and it has not yet been located. His selections of curious provenance lay in storage for several centuries after he died, but in 1805, his descendants donated the stone to the Scottish National Museum in Edinburgh. The curators of the museum regarded it as an ancient, fragile, and priceless example of ancient Sumerian metalworking. They therefore failed to discover its anomalous warmth, its indestructibility, or its impossible microscopic scale construction. They were, however, able to identify the runes in Young's sketch as Tertiary Sumerian cuneiform, circa 3400 BCE. The partial translation states something about loss, someone named a pact, an ending, joy, and permanence, or possibly protection. Mr. McCandlish, who performed the translation, noted that it appears to be some sort of incantation or spell of containment. A pact is the name of whatever is imprisoned within the gemstone. The stone was finally placed on semi-permanent display in 1949, and in 2003, Foundation staff observed that the mottled white patterns on its surface resembled the cosmic microwave background, a pattern of microwaves encompassing the entire observable universe. The Foundation staff are pretty damn observant, I must say. Closer inspection showed the two patterns to be identical. The stone, along with Young's journal, was immediately purchased by a Foundation front organization and transferred to Site 10, where Dr. Hack and Dr. Mirsky performed initial routine analysis. Research continues under the auspices of Dr. Mirsky, as Dr. Hack has recently left the Foundation. Young's journal also includes several detailed sketches of the stone. In one of them, a small ornate object resembling a key is shown fitted into the stone's north pole. The key has not been recovered. I'll admit to being a little confused by this one initially, as it doesn't seem like much of an anomaly. I thought maybe it's similar to the prototype proposal, being the first anomaly the Foundation came across, but that's definitely not the case. Thanks to some hints from the author, however, we can put a bit more together. Essentially, the entire universe is an SCP, a containment protocol created by some higher organization in order to keep something inside of it contained. There still isn't a real explanation for what the stone is or what happens when it's opened using the key, but chances are it's not great. Things are generally contained and locked for a reason. Apparently, Hack realized that opening it would be bad and decided to stop the experiments, but Mirsky killed him and resumed the experiments. Now the Foundation is trying to find the key, probably just to keep a hold of it, but they don't really know what's going on with the stone either. This is a pretty rare case where a good chunk of an article's meat is in an author's hints rather than contained anywhere in the article itself. Whether that makes an article good or bad is subjective, but I do like the idea of universes being created by advanced civilizations just to contain really bad stuff. sort of the final form of the SCP Foundation. Let's finish with SCP-001, You Are the Anomaly, Tumor of the Worlds. It opens with a note from the Records and Information Security Administrator, stating that this document was received on August 10, 2026, from another dimension, describing an anomaly threatening all members of humankind in all extant worlds. It has been established that, before the message was received, a signal had been emitted for 8 minutes, containing an exceptionally powerful cognitohazard of Danger Class 0. The Foundation was unable to counteract this anomaly, but no residual symptoms of it affecting the minds of Earth denizens have been found. According to the latest measurements, the other dimension no longer exists. The document opens with a message from the SCP Foundation of the relict dimension R42, and states that it is for the SCP Foundation of Paradimension PD. Enclosed, they will find information about SCP-001, which is a threat to the multiverse. As they may have noticed, this message was preceded by a burst signal containing a non-dangerous cognitohazard. The burst signal was constructed in such a way that minimal change to the signal would have caused indiscriminate and overwhelming casualties among the denizens of PD. As they can see, R42 is capable of eliminating the absolute majority of PD denizens, but has not exercised this capability. In the context of the above, they ask the Foundation to consider this action not as an act of aggression, but as a demonstration of the fact that R42 has no pretension for conquest or other forms of aggression towards PD. Ah yes, we have a really big gun, but don't worry, we won't use it on you. We're then given the file on SCP-001, with the unique object class of Paradox Apollyon, meaning that it's an anomaly that will inevitably eliminate mankind, but the only way to eliminate it is to eliminate mankind. It consists of all living members of the Homo sapiens species, without exception, including humans living in both the relict dimension R42 and the PD paradimension. The anomaly first came into existence and developed in the relict dimension, and later activated in PD by accident. Unchecked growth of SCP-001 will cause annihilation of the entire multiverse. It is known to their researchers that, at the moment of the Big Bang, the formation of a finite number of parallel dimensions, 57 in total, happened in an event referred to as alpha. Creation of new dimensions in natural conditions without disruption is impossible. Due to unknown causes, humanity came to exist in only one of the 57 relict dimensions, R42. The danger to reality that SCP-001 poses lies in its anomalous capability to wide-scale replication of paradimensions. This term refers to a parallel reality which has an extremely small deviation from its parent dimension. Some technical speak here, but basically anytime any human makes any sort of decision, it creates a branching timeline or dimension. As such, dimensions housing living people uncontrollably grow a colossal number of minimally differing paradimensions every second. Other relict dimensions outside of 42 do not have paradimensions, as humanity has not come to exist in those dimensions. The Foundation on R42 is not aware of whether other relict dimensions contain other forms of sapient life, but even if it does exist, there is no sign of further paradimension replication in those dimensions. Their analytics have determined a ceiling on the colossal amount of paradimensions, however, surpassing which will destroy the multiverse as a whole. This value is referred to as Omega, and their rough estimation for when they'll hit Omega, assuming worst-case scenario, is about a few months after the Foundation here receives this message. The paradimensions created through replication exist in a state of existence uncertainty. While indirectly affecting the stability of the multiverse and objectively forming due to the effects of SCP-001, each paradimension does not exhibit signs of its existence due to the lack of any physical processes within it. This state is broken after opening a space-time tunnel into the dimension. At that moment, the existence uncertainty ends, and the paradimension begins to exist in the full meaning of the term. All physical processes begin to flow as if they always have been from the Big Bang to the moment of the dimension's formation. Due to the fact that new beings come into existence with the abolition of existence uncertainty, this dimension becomes a source of paradimension replication in itself. The foundation of this universe, along with all the people here, were created approximately 17.4 years ago, and afterward remained in a state of existence uncertainty for an extended period of time, from R42's point of view. Emergence from this state and the beginning of their factual existence happened approximately 0.7 years ago, after an exploratory portal from R42 was briefly opened here. As such, the society of R42 technologically and historically surpasses PD by approximately 16.7 years, which has allowed R42's foundation to discover SCP-001 and develop computing solutions of colossal scale, which in turn considerably advanced the research of this anomaly. In case you didn't quite get all of that, whenever someone makes a decision, no matter how small of one, such as what they have for dinner one night, it creates a parallel dimension. This is the multi-world theory, where across all the multiverse, there's a different dimension for every possible version of every person in existence. Normally, this theory is spoken of in a more whimsical sense, but here, the Foundation of Another Dimension discovered that not only were these different dimensions cropping up constantly due to the existence of people, there's a finite limit to how many dimensions the multiverse can hold. On the plus side, these parallel dimensions don't really exist, and thus there's no people actually there to create new dimensions. On the downside, there's already enough people between this dimension and R42 to end the multiverse anyways in a few months. What's more, if someone manages to tunnel into one of these other dimensions that don't exist, they suddenly cause them to exist. That's what happened to the baseline Foundation's dimension, springing all of them up to the point when the universe was first created by someone's branching decision 17 years ago. In other words, this Foundation and this dimension didn't actually exist before about 8 months prior to them receiving this message. It just sort of speed ran through history and made everyone think that they've always been here, with the same timeline as R42, except for Heath Ledger not dying or something. SCP-001 was discovered by Foundation researchers approximately 5.1 years ago, with the Omega value being calculated soon after. A special research group from R42 began developing methods of complete or partial suppression of paradimension replication to prevent or postpone by any possible measure of time the occurrence of a ZK-class cross-reality failure event. Unfortunately, their Foundation had to go to extreme measures to delay the ZK-class event as much as possible, with operations Castling and Minimal Gain being developed for that purpose. The O5 Council assembled Roster 1, which included all persons who have vital scientific or other importance to SCP-001 research, and Roster 2, which included all persons who were needed to perform field work during the interim period of Operation Minimal Gain. To enhance morale, one family member per person was included in each list. The operations consisted of 8 stages, starting with neutralizing all contained Keter and Euclid anomalies whose containment incurred considerable cost. Operation Castling then involved launching rockets with variant C-Global amnestic dispersing warheads. They established control over dignitaries of all national and transnational organizations, mass media, and religious leaders. By the end of the operation, the Foundation had established absolute control over all states and all spheres of human life on the planet. Stage 3 involved destroying all hazardous radioactive, chemical, and bacteriological objects, as well as shutting down and recultivating nuclear power plants, chemical plants, and biolaboratories, mothballing all extractive industries, enacting hydroelectric dam outlet and demolition, and mooring and draining fuel from all ships. Stage 4, at the same time, dispersed viral agents over third world countries, which were largely safe for countries with other climates and levels of healthcare development. Stage 5 added deactivation-resistant viral agents to water treatment and collection plants, food products, medications, and household items of developed countries. Stage 6 had all surviving humans not included in the rosters, which was about 0.1% of Earth denizens, pursued via strike drone aircraft and Foundation personnel. Any survivors were collected in concentration camps to perform decisive liquidation conservation efforts on the planet's surface, and to sample those fittest to preserve humankind. Stage 7 had 15,000 humans selected and driven into cryosleep, with the remaining survivors eliminated. Lastly, the personnel within Roster 2, along with their family members, were all eliminated. As a result of actions undertaken, the cross-reality failure event has been delayed by a considerable margin, and the speed of approach has been slowed to a minimum. The most prospective paths of development at that moment were the creation of will and reasoning variability dampening devices, as well as projects around delegating the consciousness of all survivors to a central processing unit. Under most modest estimations, accounting for highly limited human resources, the realization of these projects would take 9 to 15 years out of those available to the Foundation before the onset of the ZK-class event. We're then provided a list of proposals that they considered to solve this problem. One was to use SCPs to eliminate derivative dimensions, but this was rejected, since considering the list of SCPs still in their possession, they wouldn't be able to keep up with the creation of new dimensions. Their proposal to put part of humanity into cryosleep until the problem was solved was accepted and implemented. Another proposal was to develop nanobots with the capability of hijacking human decision-making capabilities and eliminating variability. They deemed this to have a pretty high degree of success, but decided to reject it because they wouldn't be able to actually finish development on it before the multiverse would collapse. Another couple proposals that were rejected for the same reason was replacing humanity completely with bionic hybrids acting explicitly within standard behavioral models, or consolidating humanity into a combined neural network with delegation of control to a central AI control unit. One proposal involved shipping off a bunch of humans in cryosleep on ships into deep space, but this was rejected as it doesn't really solve the problem at all. Same with another proposal to just destroy Earth and all of its inhabitants, with the only concern there being that another dimension could come into existence at some point, and they'd be back where they started. Lastly, a proposal was put forward to use SCP-0000, with the development of that one finished. Unfortunately, at that time, very little was known about paradimensions themselves, and the existence uncertainty theory had not been developed as of yet. Various researchers proposed a theory that lack of paradimension replication from paradimensions could signify that humans existing in them were not SCP-001, and could therefore be excellent test material for R-42. The O5 Council made a decision to begin development on technology to open a cross-dimension space-time tunnel into a random paradimension based on remaining anomalous materials at the Foundation's disposal for the purpose of studying it. This paradimension turned out to be the PD dimension. The portal proved to be highly unstable and closed after 2 days. At the same time, it was discovered that this dimension became a source of paradimensions in itself. When considered, along with the fact that PD existed in precisely the state R-42 was in at the moment of PD's creation, a hypothesis about existence uncertainty was established. R-42's Foundation chose to make no further attempts to open a portal into PD due to the high risk of accidentally afflicting other dimensions with the anomaly. From the moment PD began to produce its paradimensions, R-42 was left no time or hope for salvation. Unfortunately, R-42's Foundation cannot open a portal into this dimension and destroy PD denizens by itself. They've waived the idea of eliminating the majority of PD denizens because the Foundation's personnel could survive in underground bunkers, and has access to numerous Thaumiel-class objects, rendering such actions moot. They don't have enough time to repeat Operations Castling and Minimal Gain, so instead they provide a message from the O5 Council, which reads, "The world has existed before us, and must remain after us. Our multiverse is ill, and the name of the illness is humanity, SCP-001. The only way out is SCP-0000. We'll cease to become a threat with its help. It is in our power to leave a chance for other sapient species that perhaps will not be afflicted by the same anomaly, or will find a way to get rid of it before it's too late. We, the O5 Council, and other survivors from R42 have chosen our fate. We hope you will do the same." They provide the methodology to calculate the Omega number and the means to investigate paradimensions, main scientific deviations regarding SCP-001, and the instructions to create and use SCP-0000. The final addendum contains a private message for each of the O5 Council encoded with personal Overseer encryption keys. As for what SCP-0000 is, its object class is Paradox Thaumiel, meaning that it's designed for conclusive, irrevocable destruction of humanity and prevention of the threat caused by them via realization of a localized ZK-class event. It consists of a device, developed by the Foundation of Relict Dimension R42, capable of annihilating the dimension it is activated in. After the destruction of the target dimension, all child paradimensions in the state of existence uncertainty will undergo slow self-destruction. We're then given the message that was intended for O51, written by someone named Joan Simpson. It reads, "Hello, Dad. I don't know if I have the right to call you Dad, for you are just a copy of the one I recently mourned the passing of. In some way, you are the cause of his death. But you are also a human, who, like us, is not at fault for any of this. In your world, I am just a little girl, and the one who's writing now is your grown-up daughter, one of the leading Foundation employees. Strange, isn't it? I didn't want to record a message, but my colleagues made me. They say it's very important. Well, I couldn't have a last word with him, so I'll have a last word with you. I'll address you and not you, as if I had known you for so many years, alright? I remember the day the rosters started to get implemented. Rosters of those for whose sake everyone else had to keep working. There was an idea to let the Overseers save not one member of family, but two. You yourself stood against it, believing that it would lead to an unhealthy schism within the Foundation that was about to become very, very small. Only a few hundred. That many were supposed to be left after the mad harvest you've planned. Those and 15,000 people in cryosleep. You were implacable, and the day you began to assemble the roster, I understood everything by the look in your eyes. You didn't save Mother. You chose to save me. I still don't know what to think about that. But even if I had had some sort of anger directed at you, it's long gone now. I began to work alongside you. All the hostages, as they were called behind backs, began to work on the project. We had more than enough time. Hope was our guiding star. On the days I felt especially miserable, you led me out to the surface. We sat on the grass in hazard suits and watched over the empty city at the bottom of the mountain. The city that only birds of prey inhabit now. You promised that we'd return there and build a giant monument to the human at its center. I listened to you and knew it was a lie. Every single one of our prospective projects would have left nothing human in us. Our descendants would not waste themselves on sentiments. Then someone proposed to open that portal. Fatal mistake. When you've learned the paradimension started replicating worlds, you understood that it was all over. There were flimsy ideas to open the portal again and throw some sort of a wonder bomb in there, but Nobody had any guarantee that it would not open into a different paradimension. The countdown went down to months again. Your promise became impossible. You took your own life. In your honor, the seat of 051 was left vacant. Truth be told, I don't care now whether you'll destroy your world or not, whether the universe will exist, whether there will be new life in it. My world has been crushed long ago. It's good that this message is encrypted with your key that was passed on to me, or these lines would have been deleted. Everyone wants to save the world. But who needs it like this? Empty and cold, without those to appreciate its beauty, without humanity. Do whatever you think is right. I truly feel better now. Love you. Faithfully yours, Joan Simpson. Alright, so another dimension, which turns out to be the original dimension that humanity came out of, discovered the many worlds theory. But unfortunately, all those other dimensions were overloading the universe's RAM, and it was about to crash. Through some exceptionally harsh steps, they wiped out nearly every last human and threw the survivors into cryosleep to try to give the best and brightest researchers a chance to find a solution. Unfortunately, those researchers opened up a portal into another universe, which ended up bringing it into existence with its own massive population of humans, making the near genocide they committed a pretty moot point. Now their only real hope is a device that annihilates their own dimension, along with any others that it created that haven't been awoken yet. They're hoping the other Foundation does the same, leaving the multiverse intact for maybe some other sapient species to come along at some point. Humanity dies off, but the multiverse lives on. Maybe with humans at some point, maybe not. It's a pretty grim ending, about as grim as it gets in the SCP universe, as there really isn't any other way out. There are those, however, like 051's daughter, who thinks that at this point it's better if the multiverse just gets destroyed. Or rather, she doesn't really care one way or another. I can't say I really blame her at that point. SCP-001 proposals tend to be about the biggest and most impactful anomalies known to the Foundation, whether that's something that contributed to the origin of the Foundation, or something that might very well bring about its end. This was just a small selection of the over 60 proposals at this point, with plenty more to come in the future, I'm sure.